if your net worth is under $1 million, you can't be making bad decisions like buying a house.
What's shaking? Welcome back to All In. I'm your host, Rick Jordan, and crypto, stock market, everything, Tesla, blah, blah. Everyone wants to know where to put their money, and my guest today is going to tell you exactly where to put their money. He's a podcaster and real estate investor, owns 4,500, that's 4,500 rental units, and is the leader of the Hui Deal Pipeline Club. I hope I said that right. And he's an anti-guru. We're going to talk about what that means in top 50 investing podcasts, Amazon bestseller, writer for Forbes. Lane, please give me your last name, my man. I'm not going to attempt that at the moment. Welcome to the show, brother.
SimplePassiveCashflow.com. That's all that really matters.
SimplePassiveCashflow.com. My guest is Lane today. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me. We're going to drop some knowledge bombs on folks. And
I hope so. I know, we always do on the show, and I know you're going to bring it today too, man, because your Simple Passive Cashflow is from real estate, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, so my story kind of started after I went to college, became an engineer for some strange reason. I don't know why. Must have been good at math and science when I was 9 or 10. I'm Asian, so what else is we good for, right? To do something math and sciencey. I never really liked my job. And again, followed this like dogma of like buying a house to live in. Like everybody says to buy a house to live in. So that's what I did, along with your retirement accounts, 401ks, which I don't really believe in. But I was never home, living in that big house that I bought, and I just started to rent it out. And the monthly rents were $2,200 a month. The mortgage was $1,600, and to a young 20-something-year-old kid, that was a lot of beer money every month. That was Simple Passive Cashflow. And that's where this all began. I realized that if I kept doing this again and again, I'd be able to quit my day job. And yeah, I eventually did. So let's talk about how people can do that.
Dude, that's awesome. We were talking a little bit before the show about the audience, and I was talking, 20-year-olds, for example. I wasn't thinking about this when I was 20. Exactly what you were thinking is, hey, where do I put my money right now? Where do I want to be 20 years from now financially? Those weren't thoughts, because when I was 20, it was all like, okay, how do I just go work a job? Just like you said, how do I get to the point to where I can buy a house? Because that's what we're supposed to do, right? is find a stable place, a quote unquote stable place to live and have something that's ours. And for your point of saying, you saw that the mortgage was $1,600 a month for the place you were looking at, but yet it was renting out for $2,200. And that difference is what you saw, right? That $600 a month of really profit or passive cash flow, which is incredible to me. And there's even a concept I'm hearing a lot now is, rent your primary residence, but own other doors that own assets that are going to produce you more cash.
Right, exactly. That's what I do. I mean, I live here in Hawaii, invest where the numbers make sense, and live where you want. And 4,500 rental units. I mean, I still rent. I actually have a feeling, I haven't really made a YouTube video on this yet, but I feel like you shouldn't buy a house. The price of your house that you live in should be no more than 50% of your net worth. So you shouldn't buy a $500,000 house unless your net worth is $1 million.
Wow.
50, yeah.
Now, you said you're an engineer, right? And you went, obviously you're pretty decent at math. How did you come to that rule of thumb to where it's like your house should not be worth or cost any more than 50% of your net worth?
I mean, this is going to sound messed up to a lot of people, but if your net worth is under $1 million, you can't be making bad decisions like buying a house to live in. Like buying a house is kind of like running your Ferrari with your handbrakes on. It's just not a good financial decision. And it's frustrating. And that's kind of what I do. Why I do my whole podcast is like, there's just so much bad financial advice, right? Go to school, put your money blindly in these retirement accounts, self-directed IRAs, Roths. It's not what the wealthy do. They buy hard assets and then they have cash flow streams and they live off of that. That's
those hard assets. Yeah, they don't dump their cash into a hard asset just to live inside of it, not make money off of it.
Right.
That's
Right.
incredible, man. You're dropping value bombs already, man. Just a lot of mic drop moments with this, and where you said that, and this I don't know if you saw my facial expression, but I was like, whoa, when you said if your net worth is under $1 million, you should not be buying a home.
Yeah. But let's kind of step back a little bit. Like most people in this world should follow this financial advice from Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey, that don't go into debt, because most people are really bad with their money, right? These are the people who just can't save any money. They just buy stupid stuff. And simplepassivecashflow.com, myself, like I was a good saver, right? A lot of my folks, they max out their 401ks. If you're not like that, maybe you shouldn't be listening to me, right? In fact, if you're bad with your money, maybe you should go buy your house to live in, because it ultimately becomes a forced savings account. And you're financially immature and you need that, right? But if you are financially mature, able to save at least, $10,000, $20,000 plus a year, right? There's a different way of doing this, right? Buying rental properties, growing your net worth faster that way. So I think that's what we're kind of going to be kind of talking about, that paradigm. Before we start to, real estate, everybody thinks of real estate as like flipping houses, right? We don't do any of that stuff. That's all for like broke guys, flipping houses, wholesaling houses. That's all for guys. Yeah, guys who don't make a good professional salary, right? And that's what you have to do when you don't have money. But you need to have money to invest in real estate to get on this escalator. And this is kind of the way to do it: buying cash flowing properties that on a month-to-month basis, good or bad times, still makes a profit.
Yeah. How did you start, man? How big was your first multi-unit investment?
So I bought 11 rental single family homes to kind of get started, right? Like my first few are in Seattle, Washington, where we tell people do not buy properties in places like that. Do not buy properties in primary markets like the whole freaking state of California, Seattle, Portland, Hawaii, New York, Boston, right? Because these places, you don't have what's called the rent to value ratio above 1%. This is critical, right? You need that rent to value ratio over 1%. How do you find the rent to value ratio? You go the monthly rent divided by the purchase price. So a lot of the places will have, new investors, they'll buy $100,000 house out in the Midwest. Places like Birmingham, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Memphis, Little Rock, Jacksonville, Florida, Huntsville, Alabama, places like that, right? You're going to find 1% or better properties. So $1,000 a month will be about $100,000 or less, right? You take a place like California, you're going to find a place in the ghetto, which you don't buy places in the ghetto, period, that rents for, that's $400,000. That rents for $2,000. 2,000 divided $400,000, 0.5%. No bueno. That's not going to work. So that's the first thing, right? Buy properties at 1% or higher.
Wow, that's a good rule of thumb too, man. I'm still stuck on this. Hey, if you're sub $1 million, you shouldn't be buying a house. As far as your net worth goes, that's most of America, dude. Most of the world, probably.
Yeah, man.
And that's what's keeping me stuck on that thing, is that's pretty much everybody.
Yeah. But that's just like, there's so much like financial dogma trying to get people to do the wrong things, right? Like National Realtors Association. Of course, they want everybody.
Oh, of course they do. Yeah, that's what fuels
right? I think George Bush was the one back in the day when they had this idea where everybody should own their house. We all saw how that worked out, right? 2008, that kind of led up to that. And then, it just also is like the 401k and all these mutual fund products, like these retail products are just there to make Wall Street rich, all these hidden fees. Like when I bought my first handful of properties, I was making like 20 to 30% return on my money every year. People don't believe me. Go to I have a YouTube video where I do like a whiteboard exercise where we break down, you're making money with appreciation, tax benefits, the cash flow, right, which you mentioned, and then the fact that the tenant is paying down your mortgage for you. And that's the key differential between you pay down, you own your own house. You're the sucker who's paying your mortgage and getting the equity buildup. But in these cases, you're having your tenant, hard sweat and tears, paying that for you. And that's how you're getting that higher return. And then I was like, well, how am I making like 20, 30% in a simple rental property? And only my stocks and mutual funds are making 8 to 10%. WTF, right? And this is where I started to realize, well, like, this is what the system wants, right? The system wants little good boys and girls to go to jobs, work for 50, 60 years and give almost half of their money to Wall Street companies to pay for these big buildings and executive salaries. And ultimately, they're making it off hardworking people's backs.
For sure. I see you there with George Ross in the photo behind there. I met him at Harvard a few years ago. He's a funny guy. He's a really good.
Yeah, Uncle Donald Trump's ex-lawyer, right?
Yep, you got it, man. He was like his guy in all the deals that he did. I mean, it's another good example of what you're talking about. But when you're saying, my mutual funds only made X amount, 8% or whatever, I'm making 20 to 30% of real estate. Can you the different classes of assets, like A, B, or C assets? Can you break that down for everybody, please?
Yeah, so Class A are your new builds, your luxury, less than 10, 15 years old, right? I think this is what most people would like to own. But I'm telling you, it's not where the money, it's not the sweet spot. The sweet spot is more of a B, C asset. So this is more your blue collar type of housing. Maybe it's not where you guys would like to live. And maybe it's not the safest place to be at night, right? These are not in the best school districts, right? But this is where you're going to get the most rent to value ratio and get the most return bang for your buck. Obviously, you want to stay out of the war zone Class D assets, right? Because these are just dangerous areas. You're going to have bad collections on rents, and stay away from the high end. So there's a sweet spot in the middle, and this is where we kind of focus in on. We call workforce housing, $700 to $1,400 a month, right? This is where the most of America's population, and this is where they need more of this housing. Right? The lower middle class. It's a growing population.
So you're really only talking about, for somebody who's investing right away or just getting into this, you're really only talking like a $75,000 to $150,000 home.
Yeah, in a lot of these places. Yeah, you're correct. We're under $100,000, and yeah, hey guys, you guys need 20% down payment. So if you don't have 20 grand, you can't do this. Again, this is not for broke guys, but this is a get rich surely type of thing, not a get rich quick thing.
For sure, right on. Now, when you were first starting too, I mean, that's great. How you explain. I was going to ask, what are the differences and why do they matter? You explained all that already. You do need the 20% to put down on these homes because they're investment properties. This isn't something like for those that are getting started to, which are most that are listening right now, man, because it's a younger demographic. It's not something that you can do like an FHA on to get the mortgage on and then rent it out to where you have 3.5% or 3%, whatever it is for FHA, or there's a new trend. Have you seen this now to where it's called a piggyback mortgage to allow individuals? It's the first and second mortgage from a primary lender that will get you down to 10% down payments from the same one. And you can get approved for the primary and the secondary mortgage immediately at the same time. It's something coming out of COVID that's pretty interesting. Have you been keeping track of that?
No, I don't care about that stuff these days. It's just no
Good answer.
Like just get 20% down payment. Yep. I mean, if you don't have that money, you probably shouldn't be doing this in the first place, guys.
And it's not a bad place to start either, because even if it's just $75,000 for this, that's like what would you consider that? A B or C class asset? Something like that? Yeah.
You just need 20 grand down payment, and you should have some like extra 5-10 grand cash reserves just in case your tenant screws it up, which they will, right? But this is a business, but it's a passive business. We always employ third-party property managers. They take 10% of the rents, but that's how you're able to scale. You don't want to be like the mom and pop landlord who goes in there and fix the plumbing themselves. You want professionals to do it, and you want to pay third-party professionals to fix it up should something go wrong.
That's phenomenal, man. You're laying out a structure here already. I'm assuming a lot of this is at simplepassivecashflow.com, simplepassivecashflow.com. Yes, I love that. So,
a lot of our clients are a little bit higher net worth, so they have the money to do this. But if your guys' listeners are a little younger, I don't do this. I don't advocate this, but they call it house hacking. So you buy a duplex, you live on one side, then you can get the lower percent down payment, right? The 5-10%, get an FHA loan. But I think that's ghetto. Like, who wants to live with your tenant? That's kind of my style,
you don't want them
right?
knocking on the door, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on.
Like, you could go live outside on the streets and not pay rent, but I'm not going to do that.
For sure.
But that's another option. If people don't have that much money and they're just really trying to get on this escalator, try the house hack method, right? But for most people who are with a significant other, it ain't going to fly, right? You're not going to have your tenant next door. It ain't going to happen. Let's be realistic, right?
That's hilarious.
And if you can kind of get a sense, like, I'm a personal finance blogger, right? But I'm very different from most personal finance bloggers who are telling you don't have your latte, right? Because it'll equate $50,000 at the end of your lifetime. I'm kind of prescribed to the more fat fi lifestyle, right? Live within your means, but don't be, don't spend too much time. Time is more valuable than money at some point.
Very much so. Yep. For sure, my man. So you were talking a little bit about that you hate 401ks, right? And I'm kind of with you on that a little bit. And for somebody who's investing in a 401k, because I even provide 401ks to my people, man, that work for me. And it's just because it's something that's there, and it helps attract good employees as well as we're bringing them on board, because it's something, right? Just like you were talking about, buying a house is a savings account for a lot of people. And that makes sense because you can appreciate some value that's there, and it makes sense. I've moved a little bit of property in my life just as the primary residence before I finally realized, hey, maybe I want to rent my primary residence and then put everything else that I have, the free cash flow, into something else that's an investment. And taking a look at those possibilities and the 401ks, how much money does a typical American that put into a 401k every single month?
Probably nothing, right? But out of my tribe, I mean, my guys are usually saving anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 at the very least every year. So we're in the top 0.5% of the 0.5% of 1%, right? Again, people who make less than 50, 60 grand a year, less than $20,000 cash savings should not go to simplepassivecashflow.com. They should not follow me, right? You guys need to go and read how to save your money, get your little envelopes together, right? Because that's what I did out of college, right? That's the basics of personal finance, and you guys need to figure that out, right? But most people take their whole 20s to figure that out, right? And they're scrambling in their 30s and finally getting their S together in their 40s.
Yeah, it could be early 20s where you just want to work a second job, right? And you could, if you've got a full-time job that's paying your bills, assuming you're not living at home still, then you could go get another job as a barista at Starbucks or something like that, put in another $15,000 a year just from doing a part-time job, and then in a year, you pretty much have your down payment for one of these properties and get
go
kicking.
live with your mom and dad and suck it up. Get that extra $10,000 a year so you can go buy that rental, and then you can get that in this escalator of financial freedom.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, man. Is that where you see a lot of your people starting? Or what level do they come to simplepassivecashflow.com? Do they already have funds aside?
Yeah, people that come to Simple Passive Cashflow, these guys are making $60,000, $70,000 out of college in their professional jobs. And they're usually really good savers, right? Like, I mean, I used to do so much cheapo things, eating ramen, washing my car in the rain. Like, I was able to put away a lot of money. And for some people, that's just how we're grown up, right? Like we go to restaurants, if we went to restaurants, right? You don't get no soft drinks, right?
Get no soft drink.
You get no soft drink. You get some water with ice if you're lucky.
That's we're going to BOGO night for pizza, right? That's what
yeah. You better go eat up, because we ain't gonna eat tomorrow. You're gonna intermittent fast next 2 mornings, right?
Just no, but have that down payment. You're going to intermittent fast.
People look. I mean, most people aren't like that, right? But most of the people in my group, like, we were good at saving money, right? The key is and I think what a lot of people realize is they wake up and they have $50,000, $100,000 in their 401k, and they kind of get the sense that there could be something better, and there is something better, right? But unless you get that $20,000 down payment to go buy a house, to rent it out, or go into syndication deals and private placements, you don't really get on that escalator, right? You're kind of locked in what I call retail investments. And this is the big problem I have with the 401ks. It's kind of like when you're in high school, right? You got the high school cafeteria, a bunch of garbage, right? And it's expensive too. I don't know, mine's was. But as soon as you get that off-campus pass, you're out of there, right? You're getting Burger King, Taco Bell, better food, cheaper, right? And this is outside of the cafeteria that is the 401k with all the Fidelities, Vanguards. It's a bunch of garbage. Fee-laden products, right? It's investing for the clueless.
Yeah, no kidding. We were talking a little bit before the show about crypto, right? And that's the latest craze right now. And I'm not saying that it's bad, but over time, I mean, there's been a lot of different investments that have come up over the past, we'll say 50 years. All the latest trends and everything, and crypto could be different. Because I've had a lot of crypto experts on the show. How do you feel about that compared to real estate?
I like it, but for younger people, stick to the basics, right? And I kind of have 3 big rules for investing. First rule is that's the cash flow, right? Give off monthly stream of income. Crypto doesn't really do that. Gold doesn't really do that. Next, it has to be a hard asset. Now, you can make a argument that it's a currency in a way, but it's not like real estate, right? Real estate's a diversified commodity of lumber, wood, land. Um, and then lastly, it's got to be leverageable, right? And yeah, there's a futures market for crypto, right? But I mean, real estate is one of those things where you get this government subsidized loans, right? Because the government still wants us to own houses. So nowhere else in this world, like in the United States, where you get these sweet Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Yeah, you still need 20% down payments, right? But and then also the tax benefits too. I mean, that's why would you not do real estate? And I think this is where I understand where young people are coming from. Like the real estate is a little boring, right? You're not going to like get rich quick. It's kind of boring. It took me like 6-7 years to get up to 11 rental properties, and I was a really diligent saver. But like, I mean, I get it. A lot of people just aren't into the whole waiting game. They want it now, and that's fine if you want to gamble. Just go to Vegas, put it all on black if you want to gamble, right? But if you want something, a sure thing that just happens to take a lot of time, then that's what cash flowing real estate is.
Your first 11 homes were single families, yeah?
Right. And then I kind of went into like syndications and private placements as I started to get around other accredited investors, higher net worth investors. And I started to realize that, they'll go into these more country club deals, really go into a better asset, bigger asset. But the key is it's not retail, right? You got to know people who are doing this, and there's less fees. It's just better deals. But unless you start off buying some rentals, you're not going to get into those circles.
Sure, no doubt. And that's how you got to 4,500 plus doors too.
Right.
By getting those sort of, yeah, when you're talking private placement, just to break it down, what does that mean for getting into those? Because it's investor. I mean, I know it's investors in order to get you to buy the larger properties, and then they get a piece of the investment too.
Right. So the syndication deal, I kind of use the analogy of like a plane. You have in the cockpit of the plane, you have the general partners. These are guys who source the deal. They get all the investors together. They operate the deal. They send out the checks. They do everything. Passive investors are people that come and coach, right? They pay their minimal investment. They get on, they go to sleep, cash your checks, right? And passive investors like to do this, and they diversified over dozens of these type of ventures. And then the general partners and passive investors are aligned. In the analogy, if the plane goes down, everybody goes down. Right. Of course, they could probably take their parachute and dive out, but that doesn't happen.
It's next to impossible a little bit when you're talking about hard assets. Yeah. For sure. That makes a lot of sense too. I appreciate that. That's a good analogy, man, because I've known a lot of the syndicated deals that exist, and I have a lot of friends who are in those types of deals, but it's never been explained so clearly like that, where it's like you have the investors, and that's actually, it's not a bad scenario to get involved in. How do you feel about this, about, a younger generation getting involved as one of those passive investors in those deals? Because I'm assuming that your level you're playing at in those deals, you're the general partner level, right? You're the ones
right,
you're the one that's flying the plane.
We're the ones putting together. But what I will say for younger people, go out and buy a rental property so you actually know what the F you're looking at. Because anybody can put together a syndicated deal these days, right? You can just go on Upwork, pay someone $20 to make a really nice pitch deck, right? Everybody has a podcast these days, right? Everybody can make it seem like they have a lot of friends. Look at them back at me, right? I don't know. I mean, I may not know these people, right? No, but these people are from my group. We do a lot of field trips together. But I mean, like, the biggest thing about going into syndication deals is knowing who you're working with, who to trust. How do you do that? Well, you need to develop a network around you of other high net worth passive investors to get referrals from. So, which requires building real relationships with real people, which is not going to happen if you're just some newbie, right? So I always kind of recommend people going into their own deals first, getting a rental so they understand it, right? And then so that they actually have a fighting chance to analyze what's on the pitch deck. And then at the same time, building their network of other high net worth passive investors to kind of build up a list of referrals.
Oh, sure. You got to shake more hands, man. That's the only way that it works. Right on. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see people who are just getting into this make?
So I think most people will go into like house flipping, stuff like that, where it's predicated on appreciation. Buying low so high makes sense, but if a recession comes, you're screwed. right? With cash flow investing, recession comes, well, the price of the property will drop, but you are buying an income stream, right? You're buying that monthly recurring revenue. So as long as you can keep it occupied, or maybe you have to drop the rents $50, right, to keep it occupied, but you're still holding on to the asset, you're still cash flowing. And that's the key. And that's why when you're a cash flow investor, it really doesn't matter what the economy does up and down, right? It's always a good time to be buying.
It's interesting too, because when the economy fluctuates, I've seen this in the past, and I'd love your take on this too, that typically when you see house values drop a bit, it's almost like rents go the opposite direction. They tend to go up.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that doesn't drop, typically it's rents.
Yeah, exactly. Because it
Not saying
still
it can't
costs.
happen, but
Yeah, it still costs what it costs to live someplace. That's that's just the thing. But it's awesome because you're insulating yourself in this. When you're buying something that produces passive cash, you're buying an asset. You're using cash to buy an asset that produces cash. That's really what it comes down to. And I love it because even though, like you said, the house value can drop, what does it matter? Because you still have the same payment on the debt load that you have. That hasn't changed, even though the house value dropped. And you still have rent coming in. You still have the same amount of passive income coming in. So you're still in the same financial position that you were before the house value dropped.
exactly.
Dude, that's phenomenal. During the COVID-19 pandemic, have your views of real estate changed at all with everything dropping and just fluctuating so much?
Not really. I mean, I don't. I mean, we're cash flow guys, so I mean, the only thing that happened to the pandemic is maybe collections kind of became a little bit of issue. So like normally we collect 97% of the rents across the portfolio. You're always going to have a few deadbeats out of 100 not pay. But maybe in the worst of COVID, it dropped to the mid 90s. But a
That's
lot
still
of
not
times
bad.
if we can stay above 60 something percent on average, we're still making money. So
Yeah,
we're
and
good.
you only dropped to mid-90s, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. It's kind of the same scenario because in cybersecurity, which is my primary line of work, man, and everybody still, they really pay two things, right? They pay the rent for their office space and business because they need a place to operate business, if that's still their thing. That might have changed a bit after last year because there's more remote workers work from home and all that. But the second thing they always pay is the rental on their computer systems, or the people that actually keep them running because they just can't. Because we did not see anything drop from our collections perspective that much at all either, because it just, people need a place to live. And from a business perspective, they need computers to be able to do their work. It's just the two things that are just constant, man. I love that.
Right. And I think one notable thing with that is like, I think there were a lot of headlines, right? Oh my God, people aren't paying their rents, you're going to free rent, hashtag that. Like, man, like that's why we don't invest in blue states. Not to say anything politically, but
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we won't buy places in California, period. We're in like Texas, Arizona, Alabama, the Florida, right? Places like that, red states. And I don't know, people just seem to have more honor out there. If you can't pay, you can't stay. I mean, we invest in places with good landlord laws on our side.
Yeah, man, that's phenomenal. Has your mindset in investing changed at all? And how has it changed since you started this whole gig and to the point to where you're at now?
It is a no-brainer, this stuff. Your returns are higher. It is a more recession-proof asset. Why would you not do it? And it's made me even more frustrated of what's the normal financial advice out there that is just confusing, right? I mean, they make it so complicated, like all these stocks and mutual funds, and it really isn't, but they make it like it is just to confuse the hell out of you so you can go into their mutual fund. Right? But really, once they're just leading a bunch of cattle down into the slaughterhouse, essentially. Right. And that's why it frustrates me so much. There's so many hardworking professionals out there. And these are the people in the shrinking middle class that are paying their more fair share of taxes and working for 40, 50, 60 years. Well, most people, if they're able to save maybe 30, 50 grand a year, they can be financially free in 10 years by doing it this way.
Dang, just 10 years.
Of course, like not everybody can do that because we would get our coffee, right? We would build our bridges. We would like create our infrastructure for internet, right? Like society would crumble if everybody did that.
You were talking about red states a bit. How do you feel about Midwestern states? Because there's a lot of states that are typically red in the Midwest. Let's say the Dakotas, Oklahoma. I know you mentioned Texas, but a lot of the states that you mentioned are kind of coastal states. What about central country?
More in the sun belt is kind of where the population growth is happening. So more in that southern. I have some properties in like Des Moines and up there, but typically the trend is going out to the south, the southern temperatures. That's kind of the trend. Yeah, I mean it's good. The rent to value ratios work out there. Kansas City, Iowa, right, Minnesota, and I think you're going to have good landlord-friendly laws generally out there because they are more red states. But population growth is just stronger in those other states to the south.
I'm tracking with you. That's a factor that you look for then, yeah, because there's not a lot. I mean, even though Illinois, because I live outside of Chicago, it's a blue state, but still at the same time, there's so many people that are just exiting the state.
Yeah, Illinois is, that place is going to hell pretty quick. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, it sure is.
They're actually like I like Gary, Indiana, just for the reason everybody's getting the heck out of Chicago.
Yeah, right on, man. That's probably more like a C or D class asset. I'm sure you've looked at that area.
No. I mean, it's there. There's A, B, C's in every single state.
Yeah,
everywhere, right? And the key, I mean, it's not that like D classes are like ghettos. That's what we define it as. I wouldn't be out there even in the daytime, right? After 4 p.m., I'm out of there. I'm not even hanging out. We don't buy places in places like that, but every market has generally ABC, right? The key is just to finding where those good pockets of areas are.
That's awesome, my man. So you've got 4,500 doors right now. What's your next moves, brother?
Just keep doing the same old, just boring investing, right? Finding something that like cash flows day one. We go in with a light value add strategy. So we normally put $4,000 to $6,000 of upgrades into every unit. So new flooring, new appliances, new paint job, maybe some new playground equipment, but we're not, tearing down houses, we're not like dramatic HGTV type of stuff, right? We're putting in prudent improvements to bump the rents of $100, $150. That's our game plan.
That's awesome. How long do you hold on to these for typically?
I'm like 3 to 7 years. And that's where there's multiple exit strategies, right? If somebody wants to pay a stupid price, we'll sell. But ideally, we want to refinance people's money back out. So it's tax-free that way. And just keep holding and maybe do some more refinances, right? That's where you get the infinite return strategy.
No doubt, my man. That makes a lot of sense. Have you seen more demand too between single family homes or multi-unit homes? Apartment styles over the last couple of months or year?
Generally, the long-term trend is going to apartments because people just can't afford single family homes, period. I mean, look at the population is growing. There's more immigrants. Jobs aren't really increasing. And it's maybe overall salaries are improving, but I think if we all kind of look closely, it's very binary. Right? Your high-end stuff are getting better. Your glut of America is getting worse, right? Like, I mean, look at this last pandemic. Most of the white-collar professionals are totally unscathed, and actually lives improved. Their bank accounts are even bigger.
Oh, yeah, their commuting costs went down, man. A lot of their daily expenses that they've had are just gone now.
Right, they couldn't go on vacations.
Yeah.
They couldn't spend like their $5,000 tickets to go to the football games, right? Like, it's the divergence of middle class America, right? It's just things kind of separate the haves and the have-nots. The gap is getting bigger.
Right on. That's incredible, man. Brother, I appreciate you because I think you've given people a lot of good places to start and where to go from there. And for anybody that's there, if you got $20,000, go to simplepassivecashflow.com. And if you don't have $20,000, take what Lane's saying and just live with your mom, live with your dad for the next year or so.
You said that, man.
Yeah, I don't know. We might have to play that back or something. But no, do whatever you can. Suck it up for the next year or so, and then you can do your first property. And then you've got passive cash flow that just is going to rock it. And it took you said what, 6 to 7 years to get to 11 properties, something like that. This isn't an overnight thing. It's not a get rich quick thing. But do what Lane does. Simplepassivecashflow.com. Lane, thanks for being on, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What's shaking? Thank you for joining me on the All In Podcast. Click the subscribe button and smash that bell for notifications. Text me, 312-535-8520. Follow me on social media at Mr. Rick Jordan. See you next episode. I am Rick Jordan, and I approve this message.